And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey. It's Wednesday, not a researcher's report, not an encounter. I think Danielle and I have both been pretty busy and let Wednesday creep up on us without getting a guest. I tried to get someone, and I think maybe you did too, but it didn't. Couldn't get anybody in time. But what I've got are plenty of stories. So, and what I had lined up I think are pretty good. But before we get started, remind everyone, keep it clean for us in the chat. We appreciate you very much. Y'all be nice to each other. And the 168 hours trip for March has been postponed. So yeah, just really didn't have much of a choice on this one. Mm-hmm. We lost some of our funding and just work stuff. So, you know, it is what it is. We're going to push it off, but we're working on some stuff. We are going to be going this year back down there to do it the right way. Who knows what the right way is? The way we wanted to do it anyway. So, yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah,
that's not. Don't go sending money. We got this. It's just bad timing on some things. Is all it was. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what you got going on?
Well, I've got an Encounter Hub tomorrow night again. If anyone wants to join, I'll put my email address up. Okay. If you want to come and talk about your experiences, you don't want to be on YouTube or filmed or recorded or whatever, you can come and meet us in the Encounter Hub tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Central till 8 p.m. Central. If you email me, I'll send you a link.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it is incredibly windy here. So, and you may get to hear it in a minute. About 5 minutes before we started, I thought I was about to get blown away. I went out and videoed it. I don't know if you saw that video or not, but
you sent me it. I didn't.
Yeah, put that up there.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I cussed in it, but I was running to get in my truck to get out of here, and I saw that I didn't see any funnel cloud anywhere through all the dust, but I did. You guys check this out. I don't think I didn't cuss. Yeah, it's a surprise that I didn't.
I hope you haven't. I don't think you have.
Scary.
Yeah.
Well, I heard the rumble, and it. You know, people say they hear a train coming, and that's what it sounded like. And who knows, it may happen again. But it was just before dark. You can see the flare at the battery is sideways, and it's about a 20-foot flame.
Oh.
Thought a tornado was hitting. And I did. I knew I didn't cuss. Be proud of me.
That's strong, isn't it? That wind.
Oh man, it just out of nowhere. This is the high plains. When you're 3,000 feet above sea level, and it's been 90 degrees here, 30 degrees at night, 90 degrees in the day. Those temperature drops, it just creates some serious windage. All right, I got a pretty good lineup of stories here. This is Keno Hill, Yukon territory, as told by a Native American. So when you hear some of the words and the way it's kind of written, you'll understand that this is definitely a Native American who wrote this. This is a story told by Leonard Thomas. It says an Indian man from Canada. That would be First Nations. That's probably not politically correct, but Native American won't work since he's Canadian. Okay. I guess that's, they didn't know that it's First Nations. Here we go. It says, I'm not sure which summer it was, maybe 5 or 6 years back. The wife and I were returning from Keno Hill early one morning. Our coffee thermos was in the back of our truck, and it was my fault it was back there. She wanted coffee, so we stopped some miles before Elsa and got out to get thermos and relieve myself on the side of the road. There was a stand of trees. I wandered off a ways, walked way up there. I don't know just why I did that. It was there that I saw this bear sitting down at a carcass of elk, maybe deer. Don't know what it was for sure. There was not much left of it. I'm thinking it was black bear at first, sitting down beside the remains, but that be some unusual bear. Bears usually stand up to tear at their kill and eat standing up. This bear sat there pulling at what was left of it. Way off in the distance, there be a fox pacing back and forth, awaiting its turn at the kill. Just then, my wife yelled at me to get myself back in the truck. The bear heard her and stood up on two legs, looking in my direction. I fell backwards a bit at its size. My God, I seen it was no bear. I believe it was a bok, B-O-Q. And it had a piece of something from the carcass clutched in its hand. It stood there looking in my direction, and the fox took off at a dead run. The wife yelled again. The wife. If I did that to Linda, my goodness. The wife yelled again, and this bok started waving its arms up and down and stomping forward on one leg at me. Damn, I couldn't, this is what he wrote. I couldn't make these legs of mine move. I saw that it was black. I saw that it was black, and it was naked except for hair around the usual male parts, chest, arms, and it was unshaved looking. The bear was long and scraggly. Beard was long and scraggly, with crud and stuff in the whiskers. It took a step in my direction, stomped its foot, and was waving its arms like a crazy man might if he was high on something. I fell back again and started crawling like a baby to the truck on my hands and knees. Finally, I was able to get up and run to the truck. I saw my wife looking big-eyed at me coming. Behind me, on the top of the area where the stand of trees was, be that bok, standing and watching us get into the truck. We started the engine up and drove off, leaving the thermos out in the middle of the road there. My woman is Tuchone, Tutchone, Tuchone, maybe, I don't know. My woman. First Nation Canadian, and I'm English and Mi'kmaq, M-I-K-M-A-Q. Though I was raised up an orphan by whites named the Thomas clan in a settlement near Nova Scotia. We married 38 years ago, and her folk know the bok, but we don't see any in our lifetime until that day. I was never taught about boks. My woman told me what her people know. I don't mean to laugh. It's just, I imagine myself saying that about Linda. That's the problem here. I'm a child. It was a shock to both of us. The bok is a strange marvel. Yes, it is a strange sight. The wife says it is good to see one. I don't know how good having the crap scared out of me can be a great blessing, but she says so, and I listened. Good man. We don't speak about it much. The wife is still mad because I lost the thermos of coffee. I could have been killed, and she would still be mad about the thermos. We don't own a computer. My friend here at the petrol stop looked up and found your website listed, so we tell you about this incident, about the bok. We are not sure on height. I was in shock when it stood up full size and not thinking clearly, but I know it was maybe 8 feet up and features fitting to its size. At the time, it could have been 10 feet tall for all I noted. I don't know what it weighed. I didn't stop to ask, but it was sturdy, stocky, and plenty of bulk. I weigh 240 pounds and a mid-sized man. Not really. The bok must weigh double what I weigh. There was no sound except the stomping sound, no smell, was black, and had whiskers and long straight hair like a woman down its back and shoulders, black and shiny. There was nothing else around but a pacing fox, nothing else I can think of. I was sure it was a black bear before it stood up and started waving its arms and stomping. My God, I get hair on my neck when I get hair on my neck. This is what it says. I get hair on my neck when I think about it. My wife said the bok is left over from a cast out Indian tribe. Most were killed or run off. Not many left since white men came here, and what's left is scattered and shy. They tell me the bok is a skilled hunter and opportunist that works mostly after dark of the nightfall. That's Leonard Jack Thomas.
Mm.
Pretty good story, though.
Yeah.
Just the way he wrote it. He actually, I think he got somebody else to write it for him and send it in. Now, these are not all Bigfoot stories. This next one here, it's Lost Time. And I'm trying to remember who sent it to me.
Do you know who sent you that last one? Have you got a name for the last one?
Leonard Thomas.
All right, okay.
Yeah, these are all a couple of years old. This is his handle on YouTube is Noche Dipsum, which means know thyself. So, but he wrote this, and then it's pretty good actually. His name is Mike. It's here we go. It says, I hesitate to write this story for obvious reasons. I've never really spoken of it at length. Since the advent of the internet, I've been drawn. My goodness, I can't read. Since the advent of the internet, I've been drawn to sites like yours in search of some meaning as to what happened to my son and I 25 years ago. I took my then 5-year-old son on his first fishing trip. We live in a small town with many lakes. In fact, our credo is the city of lakes. Somebody might know where that is. I decided to take my son to a small lake that was well stocked with lake trout, ensuring he'd catch his first fish. In order to approach the lake, there was a small footpath about 125 feet in length. We scaled the small rocky path and set up camp. We were so close to the road, we could hear traffic and actually see the back of a house through the trees. It was completely safe and a popular place for youngsters to fish. We tossed out our lines, and the fish were really biting. For almost 2 hours or so, we hauled in trout after trout, much to the delight of my son. We had quite a catch. Out of nowhere, the sky had become quite angry looking. The air around us turned that funny color of amber, the way it does just before a lightning storm. I told my son it was time to leave, jokingly saying we had to leave some fish for everyone else. We packed up our tackle boxes, grabbed our fish, which I had tethered to a branch, and turned to walk back up the path. This is when it happened. There simply was no path. Not wanting to scare my little boy, I told him to follow me and we'd take the fish back to our car. We began to climb the small hill where hours before had been a well-worn path by generations of fathers and sons fishing together, but now the path was simply not there. When we crested the hill, we looked at an expansive view of deep, dark woods. The air around us was the deepest shade of amber yellow I've ever seen. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. I had no idea where we were. Again, not wanting to frighten my son, I said, we must have taken the wrong path. That's okay. We'll walk through the woods and come out to the road. My son said, okay, Dad. This was impossible. Inside, I was admittedly terrified. How could this be? Where were we? I had taken him to the lake that was plopped dead center of the city, streets on all sides. Heck, even a mall was just down the road. I looked around. There was no path. so I just started off toward the woods. That was a mistake. As we entered the woods, it became very thick, and we soon found ourselves crawling over logs, through heavy brush, a huge marsh, and eventually another lake. This lake had huge boulders around its circumference, and man, was it deep. I told my son to stay back, and I approached the new lake. It was brackish, smelled like a bog, and was quite eerie. Standing on a rock, I hastily put my two-piece rod together and fastened the weights. I took a cast a few feet from the rock, and the line unraveled all the way from my reel. Was this some type of quarry? I reeled my line back in, sat down with my son, and realized with horror we were lost in the city. The air was almost crackling and yellow, deep, deep yellow. Worst of all, it had begun to get dark. Excuse me. There's a ton of dust in the air now. I looked at my watch, and we had been walking for 5 hours. Again, this was impossible. It was time for business. I took my son's hand, threw all of our fish away, and left everything in the bushes except for our 2 rods. I began to walk in the direction we had just come, not saying anything, now unencumbered by any gear that we were carrying. My boy by now had sensed the seriousness of the situation. Up to this point, it had all been a great adventure. We walked straight as the crow flies for about 2 hours. I had an awful feeling if we didn't get out of these woods before dark, something bad was going to happen. To this day, my son still feels the grip I had on his hand as I bulldozed us through the forest. Miraculously, somehow, we rounded a bend and were on the original footpath we had started on our day on. We turned, and there was the house, or the back of it. We crested the hill, and there was our car. I'll never be able to explain the relief that washed over me. I think my little boy saved my life that day because I was so determined to save his. What was supposed to be a 2-hour day, leisurely casting our lines, became a 9-hour odyssey. I've researched possible scenarios explaining what happened to us that day 25 years ago. The closest I can imagine or believe is something called a time slip. At times, I had the intense feeling of being watched as we crashed through the woods. As God is my witness, it's 100% true. My son and I had lost, by my rough calculations, over 7 hours that day in some place strange, and we lost all of our trout. Yours truly, Mike. You know, I've been lost in the woods that I knew very well, that I felt there's absolutely no way I could get lost in them. But there are situations and circumstances that can come up, especially weather being one and nightfall being the other. It doesn't matter what woods you're in. When you can't see stars or the moon, you can't hear traffic, everything looks the same in every direction. I'm not trying to say this didn't happen to him. To me, he's in the middle of a city, 125 feet from a road. You should be able to hear cars. But you might think you're walking straight as the crow flies, and whatever your dominant leg is where you tend to circle through the woods. It just happens. When you have no bearing, you have absolutely no sense of direction, nothing to reference. You will literally walk around in circles. So, not saying that's what happened here, but I mean, that's, to me, as terrifying as any Sasquatch encounter to go through that.
Yeah, you've no kind of reference to anything, have you? Even time when you're trying to find a way out. Yeah,
I mean, with your 5-year-old, that's the terrifying part, in my estimation. All right, one second, and I'll get to another.
Okay. I'm just going to put my email up again for anyone. If you want to come on the encounter up tomorrow night, send me an email, and I will send you a link.
I've got a terrible, nasty habit. Not drinking this stuff.
No.
Okay. What was that one? That was Lost Time. This is Wood County, Wisconsin, 1985. Sorry.
A lot of dust in the air, isn't it, where you work? Just constant.
It is today, for sure. It was really dusty when I got in here. Okay. This is, Wood County. I think it's Wisconsin. Yeah. WI is Wisconsin, I think. My sister Natalie and I decided to take the four-wheeler out after dark against my father's orders. We followed the trail from our property into the McMillan Marsh. There, we were able to run along a dike system between the reservoirs. It was midwinter. My sister was driving the four-wheeler, and I was riding shotgun behind her along the dike. It was lightly snowing. Dark drew in quickly, and we were suddenly surrounded by darkness and snow with only two headlights to show the way. Sorry, it is dusty in here. Suddenly, a large 7 to 8 foot creature walked up onto the dike in front of us about 50 yards away. It stopped, turned, and looked right at us. We both noticed how the wind blew the long, light brown hair, about a foot long, on its side apart, and could see the skin was lighter underneath. Our four-wheeler lights were not high enough to see the face, but it had a large, muscular chest and arms and walked like a man. The chest was a little more hairless, so that you could see rippling muscles under the dark hair. It had very long arms and did not walk like a human. It sauntered along, totally unafraid of us. It swaggered with long arms swinging at its side, and then it went off the dike into the wilderness. We were shocked and horrified. We sat in shock for a moment and then throttled over to where it was standing. There were very large footprints in the soft snow. We hurried home and never told a soul until years later. We compared what we saw, and our stories were exact. We will never forget that night. It was not a wolf, a bear, or anything human. I stand by that with my soul. If it were just me, I wouldn't have blown it off as a figment, but Natalie has every detail to the exact of my own. That was a quick one. This is a good one right here. If I can get the dust out of my throat. This was written by Larry Batson, our very own drawing Bigfoot, Larry Batson. This is about Bob Titmus. If you don't know who Bob Titmus was, he was a very well-known Bigfoot researcher back in the 60s and 70s. He kind of ran around with John Green and Vendernagel and all those, and Larry and all those guys. And so I absolutely incredible story, I thought it was. So this is it. This is as written by Larry Batson. It says, in the last year of Bob Titmus's life, I occasionally talked with him on the phone when he was up to it. One day, he told me about being up in the Bluff Creek area, tracking Bigfoot, collecting hair samples, looking for footprints or whatever he could find. He related this incident, which occurred about a year or two before the Patterson-Gimlin footage had been filmed. Titmus was sure his memory was starting to fail him, but this event he remembered perfectly. He was deep in the backcountry of Bluff Creek by himself one afternoon. At the time, he was certain there was a Sasquatch or Sasquatches very close by the evidence he was finding. He was so involved and so focused that he lost track of the time, and then the sun was starting to go down. Excuse me. I ate pineapple. It's coming to get me. The destiny of the forest, the density. I am your density. Back to the Future. The density of the forest overcame him. He suddenly realized the day was getting too dark to find his way back to his campsite. Titmus realized that he was going to have to stay put until morning because trying to find his way out in the darkness would be dangerous and foolish. The nights can be quite cold, and he really was not wearing enough clothing to just lie in the woods and try to sleep. So he began to dig a pit to sleep in. After he finished digging his bed, he laid in it and started covering himself with a thick layer of leaves, branches, and pine needles. After he finished, the only part of him that was exposed was a small area around his face. He was quite comfortable, sufficiently warm, and had no problem going to sleep. Titmus guessed the time was probably around 1 a.m. when he was startled awake by the sound of something moving through the forest nearby, and it seemed from the sounds to be heading in his direction. He could hear the sound of heavy footsteps crashing methodically through the forest brush, breaking limbs, and so forth. At first, he thought it was a bear, but it wasn't long before he realized it was too noisy for a bear. It came closer and closer, then it stopped. Titmus could hear the thing breathing, not just breathing, but also sniffing the air, like it was trying to pick up a scent. And now he realized that it had indeed picked up his scent, but could not figure out where he was. With just his face exposed, Titmus was very well concealed from what he came to understand had to be a Sasquatch. All of a sudden, it started screaming, breaking branches, and throwing rocks in his direction. Titmus held very still, very quiet. The Sasquatch started moving around, pacing back and forth through the forest, continuing to scream, bellow, and throw debris. Titmus related that this behavior continued on until about an hour before daybreak. Then, as the sun began to rise and the light trickled through the forest canopy, the creature went away and the forest fell silent again. He pulled himself out of his makeshift bed in the ground and started to look around, investigating the entire area. He walked in the direction of where the ruckus had come from and could not believe his eyes. It looked like a bulldozer had gone through the forest. Saplings had been pulled out of the ground, large trees pushed over, broken, or snapped in two. There were branches covered with hair, and the ground was littered with footprints. It was no bear. In later years, Titmus went back to Bluff Creek shortly after the Patterson footage had been filmed on October of 1967. He saw the footprints on the sandbar the film subject had left and noted the similarity in foot size and shape to the Sasquatch he encountered the night he slept in the pit in the wild of Bluff Creek. A key figure in Sasquatch Bigfoot investigation for nearly 40 years, Titmus died in Chilliwack, British Columbia, July 1st, 1997, following a heart attack suffered a few days before at his home in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia. He was 78 years old. Wow. It's a good story, though.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Larry's told that before, right?
Yeah. And there's something about those old school guys, who were, before the internet, they were boots on the ground. They were really investigating things and taking notes much better than what we can now, or attention to detail.
Look, you go tromping through the wilds of the Pacific Northwest or Canada, British Columbia, anywhere, you're a man. I mean, look what he had to do just to stay warm, to survive, to even think to do that. Dig a pit and cover yourself with leaves. And good thing he did. Though I'm sure if you would have just been out and exposed, this creature probably would have picked up on him long before and would have never even come close, But
just shows as well the passion is still, it was there for him to find this thing, to go to those lengths. He got bit by the bug like everyone else.
40 years the guy researched looking for him. Renee DeHinden, he never saw one and probably researched at least that long. Just traveled all over, talking to people, following up on sightings. And those guys had a ton of stories. I wish I had access to them. Maybe Larry does somewhere. There's got to be a book.
He's done some great interviews. Yeah. I'll send you actually something to listen to.
Okay. Fantastic. Trying to see what's next here. How much time we got? We made it halfway.
We made it halfway.
This is Dallas County, Iowa. This happened between West Des Moines and Van Meter, Iowa, in Dallas County. It happened last summer at a camp out with my friends. This is a couple of years ago, so probably 3 years ago. My house sits in front of a rather large patch of timber. Our freshman year of high school just got out for summer vacation, and we were celebrating in the timber at the camp out. It was just getting dark outside, so we decided to build a fire. The four of us finished our supper and were sitting around the fire just talking. Soon it was pitch black outside, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We got out our flashlights and decided to go to the tent we had set up earlier. I'm so sorry. It's just, you can't see it, but it's all in here, dust. You can probably see. You can see it on my shirt.
It just lingers though, isn't it? It's one of those
things.
Yeah,
well, it's caliche. It's like blonde colored dust, like baby powder. Fine. Sorry about that. Okay. The next thing that happened, I'm not really sure about what time it was, but it was still very dark out. We all woke up to the sound of rustling in the leaves. We assumed it was just a raccoon eating the leftover scraps of food. But then there was a strange grunting sound, sounding like some sort of sick cow or something, and heavy, raspy breathing, like me. There was a reeking stench, also like me, like rotten eggs. We all thought it was somebody. Yeah.
Keep it going.
We all thought it was somebody playing a prank on us, but in the middle of the night. And how would they find us out in the middle of the woods? We all went out of the tent to look around. Sure, it was just nothing. As we unzipped the tent, the rustling stopped and the breathing slowed down a little. As we poked our heads out of the opening, we caught a glimpse of it. Standing there by a large oak was a very large animal. In proportion to the tree it was standing near when we saw it. Its head came close to hitting the branch, which seems to be a little less than 7 feet tall. It was hairy and had reddish brown fur. I guess they could see a little bit further than their hand in front of their face. Once the four of us talked about what we saw, we all had seen the same thing. A glimpse of this hairy bipedal creature walking away. I think it seemed maybe a little afraid of us. Probably not. For what reason, I do not know. It was too far away to distinctly see its face. All I can tell you is that we only saw its backside, reddish brown fur, and very tall. I'm sure there are many people that have trouble believing a creature like Bigfoot exists. I can imagine the disbelievers far outweigh believers. Yes, that's more than just your imagination. But I can tell you, after a lot of thought, I know we all saw a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever you want to call it that night. It perfectly fits the description of many other encounters that lasted much longer and were seen much clearer. There's just nothing else it could have been. I'm confident in saying we saw and experienced a Bigfoot that night. That was short too. I didn't read through these before I picked them, so I didn't know how long they were going to be. This next one's a little bit longer. Sorry. Thanks, Mike's Adventures. Appreciate that. Tomorrow night. Oh, yeah. Tomorrow night, I'll probably do a solo show for members only. It's been a while since we've done one. So probably be tomorrow night. If it's not, what's today? Wednesday. If not tomorrow, then I'll do it Saturday. But I'll probably go through stories. I might even try to get somebody famous on. You know, call a couple people. Let's see. But cool. I know it's been a while, so members only show coming for you guys. Alabama, Limestone County. I'm in my early 30s now, but at the time of the sighting, I was 13 or 14. I was on an annual family visit to my grandparents' place. We had gone out to the river for a few days. I can't recall what day it was, but I do remember that it was in early afternoon. I was a typical kid then, so naturally I was doing kid stuff. I had a frog gig, and I was down in the boathouse pier, throwing it into the shallow water, trying to randomly hit something. No, that's not kid stuff. That's Alabama kid stuff. Mississippi kid stuff. I did nail a crappie, but I didn't hurt it bad, so I let it go. At the end of the slough was a swampy area. This area started about 250 yards from my grandparents' cabin. It was shallow water, and several hardwood trees, such as oak or dogwood, were growing in the swamp. The swamp went back perhaps a few miles. No one in my family nor myself, except maybe my grandfather, had ventured too far into that swamp. Along the sloping bank from the cabin to the swamp were 3 other cabins with piers. Across from the cabins is a gentle sloping pasture. Next to it are a couple of cabins and boathouses. Boathouses. Told y'all I can't read. It seems that every time I was at the boathouse and I looked across the water, there were always cows in the pasture. However, that day, I just let the crappie go. I happened to look out toward the swamp. As I did, I noticed something emerge from the swamp next to it and below the pasture fence about 50 feet and wade into the water of the slough. It was dark in color, and it stood upright. It had waded into the water knee deep. Yeah, into the water knee deep. They emphasize strange words here. I didn't really pay attention at first, thinking it was a bear. However, I looked again a few seconds later and soon realized it was not a bear. It was tall, at least 9 feet, well built, and very hairy. I could not make out any facial features. Nobody can see the face. Due to the distance, I didn't notice the neck, and the head was round-shaped. The creature proceeded to look both ways. It then bent over, took its left arm, and swung it into the water. I noticed the splash. The creature did this twice. It then stood up and looked straight in my direction. It stood there a few seconds, then turned around and walked back to the swamp, just like a person would. I stood there, shrugged my shoulders, and went back to messing around. About 3 or 4 minutes later, I looked back toward the swamp again, and the creature came back out from the same spot that it had before. It waded knee-deep into the water once again and did the exact same thing that it had done before, including looking in my direction once again. Then it turned around and wandered back into the swamp in the same area it had come out. It didn't come back again. I stayed at the pier for about another hour and looked that way several times. To this day, I'm convinced that it was trying to catch a fish. I never felt I was in any danger, even though it was an odd experience. However, being at that age, I didn't want to go outside alone after dark for any reason, including to use the bathroom. The cabin bathroom was in the basement, and one had to get to it by going outside. It took me a few years to be comfortable there at night. In regards to that sighting, there was something I noticed. There were no cattle to be seen in the pasture at the time of the sighting. The funny side to all this is that I had carried a pair of binoculars down to the pier with me and left them sitting next to me on the upper rail. Not once did it occur to me to pick them up and use them. A side note, 2 weeks earlier, 2 boys had found large human-like footprints in the region somewhere, as reported in a local newspaper. About 10 years ago, my grandmother sold the place. I was in the area a couple of years ago, so I drove out to the river to see the old place. No one was there, so I took the liberty of walking down to the pier and boathouse. Except for a new paint job on the cabin and a refurbished boathouse, nothing had changed over the years. The slough and swamp were still the same. I stayed for an hour picking up fossils since the water was down, it being late summer. During that brief time, I looked toward the swamp, periodically remembering, wondering, and, well, kind of hoping to get lucky. once again.
That's interesting about his binoculars, not even thinking about it.
Well, I mean, look, was he just in a daze or something? I mean, this is my question. You see a 9-foot tall man like dark thing knee deep wading through water that's up to your chest, probably. You realize this is, even if it is a bear, you're going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. So I don't know. It's just like he just blew it off like it was nothing. And then it came back and did it again. I don't know. They're not all gyms.
No.
It's not there's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad. It could be exactly what happened, but I just some of the people's behavior in these stories is, I don't know what to say about it. It's strange.
It's just how people deal with things, isn't it? It doesn't always make sense afterwards. And there's always that what if it had just done this or that. Maybe just, I don't know, caught up in the moment like sail.
It's like the guy that's fishing and this basketball-sized rock comes sailing over his head and, into the water. He turns around and sees this tall, dark thing dart into the woods, and he runs after it. You lost whatever mind you ever had? Kidding me?
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, you run to the truck. With a fishing pole. What's he gonna do? Whip him with the fishing pole? Come on now. All right, this is Cutthroat Pass, and yeah, it's not terribly long, but it's a pretty good story. I was on vacation in North Cascades National Park of Chelan County, Washington, in September of 2006. And for most of my 2-week vacation, I went hiking. On September night, I drove out to the trailhead for Cutthroat Pass near Rainy Pass off the North Cascade Highway, Route 20. We know where that is. The location of the sighting is basically at the crest of the Pacific Crest Trail, a very popular trail for hikers. I started my hike late, around 1 p.m., and started up the trail and hiked through the forest for a while, and then the trail opened up into beautiful meadows with incredible views of the valley and forest below. I continued on until about 4 p.m. and decided to turn back down the trail to return to the trailhead before nightfall. Along the way, up and most of the way down, I didn't see or hear anything. It was very quiet. I did, however, pass a half dozen or so other hikers at certain points on the trail. As I descended into the forest area of the trail, it was getting dark as dusk was setting in. It was approximately a half mile from the trailhead when something caught my attention. About 100 yards ahead of me, I saw a reddish-brown. What in the world is going on here? I lost everybody. All right, sorry. Some Adobe update on my computer. I was approximately half a mile from the trailhead when something caught my attention. About 100 yards ahead of me, I saw a reddish-brown Bigfoot cross the trailhead and up the mountain. The sighting was only an instant, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but it was long enough for me to notice fur, its color, and a long arm swaying. I couldn't see its head or lower legs because of tree branch obstructions. Again, can't see the face. I stopped for a moment to gather my thoughts and then continued to hike through the area, hearing and seeing nothing. When I got down to the trailhead, I sat in my car for quite a while, amazed at what I had just seen. I used to always scoff at reports where people would say the sighting was only a second and they had no time to take a picture or even think. What I got out of this is that they seem to be stealthy, quiet, and do not wish to be bothered. I'm sure this creature knew I was there before I was aware of its presence. It just continued on its way, as I did. There's a picture there, but I didn't know it was there. It says included are 2 pictures I took of the trail and forest near where the sighting was, and a picture of the valley. It's just the mountains and a valley, and it's a nice picture. Also, by no means did I get lucky on this one hike. I hiked almost every day in different locations for 2 weeks with no signs of anything Bigfoot related. Hope this will be of interest to you and your readers. This is confusing. By no means did I get lucky on this one hike. I hiked almost every day in different locations for 2 weeks with no signs of anything Bigfoot related. It seems like he did get lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe
in the end.
Yeah, maybe that was just, maybe he didn't mean to say that. All right, this is the last one. And this is a story that I wrote down. It was told to me 3 years ago. And it's a man that lives back in the bayou. I mean, these people live off the land pretty much. So I wrote it to tell on the Shudder. So I wrote it as narrator and then him also speaking. So there's 2 parts to it. And it's called John and Jake. So John Morris, ooh, this is the last one. It's better last 15 minutes. Huh? It's pretty long, but it's a pretty good one. John Morris spent his whole life in South Louisiana and was no stranger to the swamps and bayous of the Atchafalaya Basin. John sometimes ran crawfish traps with his brother Eli. It's good money for a few hours' work every other day. They would take turns, one putting them out one day, the other collecting them the next. On this particular Sunday, it was John's turn to collect. He sometimes took his nephew Jake along for company. Jake was 11 and mute. No one knew why he never spoke, but he could read and write. He was sharp as a tack, worked fast, and was a crack shot with a .22 rifle. Grab your life vest, Jake. We got traps to run. They got in John's 14-foot flat-bottom boat. It was 3 generations old, so was the 20-horse Mercury motor that pushed it. The 2 rounded up their gear and headed for the first marker. We'll start on the back end and work our way in today, Jake. You ride point with the rifle in case we see a gator. We have a tag left to fill before the first. They always trapped the same area, and John knew where Eli dropped the traps. They had made a little over halfway there when the motor began to sputter. It kicked a few times, and that was it. Well, crap. The motor's down, Jake. Grab the paddle and get us over to that island while I work on it. Jake paddled the 2 over to the island, tied them off, and got out to look around while John worked on the motor. Don't go too far, Jake. Stay within hollering distance. I'm going to clean these points and get us back going pretty quick. John started breaking the motor down while Jake took a walk down to the bank. No telling what that boy will come back with. Dadgum Mercury, I told Eli those points needed cleaning. Jake had made his way a good 200 yards from the boat. The Atchafalaya is no place to be stuck in for normal city folk, but Jake knew the swamp like the back of his hand. Still, nothing could prepare him for what he was about to see. He was trudging along, ducking low branches and Spanish moss, when he was stopped in his tracks by an odor he'd never smelled before. It was a foul stench of rotting meat and skunk mixed together. Curious, he scanned the area left to right and abruptly gasped when his eyes fell on a hair-covered creature no bigger than he, about 4.5 feet tall, hiding behind a black cypress tree. Y'all hear that? That's my trailer rattling.
Can't hear it like before. It's not as loud as before.
Okay. His eyes fell on a hair-covered creature no bigger than he, about 4.5 feet tall, hiding behind a black cypress tree. The thing was poking its head out from behind the tree, staring at Jake.
Oh, yeah.
If this just goes away, this will be my last broadcast. It's
You
just
had to remember when Tony Merkel was on, and the storm was literally, you were shaking. Do you remember? It was
yes,
shaking.
I do.
Oh, trailer.
Yeah, look, it's not uncommon out here, but doesn't happen that often. It's happening now. So anyway, its hair was thin and long, but sparse and patchy looking. He could see Spanish moss hanging off its shoulders. Jake stood in terrified disbelief, his eyes wide and beginning to well up. Back at the boat, John was putting the motor back together. He was just replacing the hood when he heard what sounded like a stick break. John stood up and called out, "Jake, you there? Come on, boy, it's time to go." He turned back to finish replacing the hood when all of a sudden a huge stump hit the water right next to the boat. What the heck is going on? Who's there? When John saw the stump, a chill ran down his spine, as he was all too familiar with what his family called the Rougarou. John wasted no time and called out again, "Jake, let's go, boy. The boat is fixed." John didn't know that Jake was too far away to hear him, but just in case, grabbed his pistol and fired 3 shots in the air. He knew Jake would hear that and know it meant it was time to go. Jake was still staring down the creature when he heard the shots. The creature snapped its head toward the loud bangs, and that was when Jake broke to run. John nervously watching down the bank, hoping to see his nephew coming, and Jake running as fast as he could through the swampy underbrush, desperate to get back to his uncle and the boat. Jake fired his .22 rifle in the air to let his uncle know he was coming. John turned to the 20-horse Mercury and pulled the cord. It sputtered. He pulled it again, and nothing. Dang this motor. He gave the bulb one more pump and pulled the cord with everything he had. The motor kicks and chokes itself to life. John looks up the bank and sees Jake running very fast through the brush. Then he sees following him the small creature Jake had encountered moments earlier. "Run, boy. Don't turn around." John grabbed his .30 rifle and aimed it at the thing. In an instant, a tremendous scream came from just in front of him. Somehow, John knew not to fire on the little creature, but he was watching closely in case it caught up with Jake. Jake got to the boat. "Get the line. We got to go. Where you been, boy?" John asked in vain, knowing his nephew couldn't answer him. They pushed off the bank and sped back to the dock. The traps could wait. They made it to the dock, loaded the boat, and headed home. "Boy, did you see that thing behind you?" Jake nodded his head, yes. "You know what that was?" Jake shook his head, no. "That was the Rougarou. It looked like you had a little one running after you, but that scream you heard was Mama or Daddy. I think they was none too happy with me about to shoot at that little one." Jake dropped his head and started crying. He had never been so scared in his life. "It's okay, boy. We will let them traps set a while, and I'll go with your daddy to get them tomorrow." That night, John called Eli and told him what happened. "I'll go with you in the morning. Check the traps. I don't think Jake is up to it." The next day came, and John showed Eli where everything happened. Eli told him that he'd seen and heard strange things on that island before, and that he always stayed clear of it. "Sure would have been nice if you'd told me that. I don't think John and Jake will be stopping there ever again."
Scary.
I liked that one.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to make a story out of it. So, but it wasn't exactly told that way. So there's, call it whatever you want, embellishment, I suppose. Like I said, I made a story out of it for the Shudder back during COVID, 2020 COVID. So, but that's pretty much what happened. The scream happened and him seeing, because he couldn't tell him what happened, you know.
No.
I just kind of made that part up. But I thought it was a cool story.
Yeah.
They did have an experience. He did see something chasing his nephew that he was running from and heard the scream and all the other stuff. It was pretty much what I got from it. But the whole thing with Jake and seeing the thing, I put that stuff in there. So,
okay.
just to let everybody know. Well, that's all I got. What you got?
I haven't got anything. We've done all right, actually. I think we've done all right under the circumstances.
Yeah, not terribly bad. Tomorrow, I'm going to put some more stories together for tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get somebody on. I got a few calls that I'm going to make. If not tomorrow, definitely Saturday. We'll do a members only. And hey, look, if you want to come on, talk about Sasquatch, if you had any kind of experience you want, email us, bigfootodyssey@gmail.com. yourbfstory@gmail.com. Also, if you want to contact, that's for Daniela. She'll get those. Because I work a lot and I try to get to emails every day, but it doesn't always happen. So, yeah.
Guys want to write to me, then I can organise you coming on and everything. Because Kerry does get busy.
Yeah.
I mean, you work a lot of hours more than what I do.
Every day.
I'm quite happy to hook people up and get you booked on if you want to come on. So, yeah. There's lots of ways.
Yeah, would love to have any one of you guys on here just to discuss the subject, whatever you want to do. So I do have a few people lined up for interviews, not lined up, but wanting to come on. I've just got to get them lined up and get time. It's when we do the show, not everyone has that hour available. So we just kind of have to pick and choose, what goes where and when. But Brad and I are going to be back here Friday night for sure. Al might be back here tomorrow for a members only, but Brad and I'll be back here Friday night for sure with our guest from last week and our skeptic, John Holmes.
Cool.
He's not really a skeptic. He just has a lot of questions.
It's just nice having, way to say it. Yeah, it's just good having someone with just a different mindset.
Yes.
Coming in and making it a bit fresher, for people, asking questions maybe people don't think about, All right.
Exactly. But hey, we appreciate you guys coming by and listening to some stories with us. And Daniela, we'll see you Sunday, right?
Sunday.
Back here, Sunday Encounters. Or Sunday Conversation, whichever one it might be.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get one of those encounters there for you guys. So I doubt I'm able to show up because it's so early.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for showing up. Y'all be good. Hopefully, if I don't see you tomorrow night, we'll definitely see you Friday or Saturday. Y'all take care. Have a good night.
Good night.